I know Mike Leigh mentioned to you many years ago now, probably 7 or 8 years, that he was thinking of making this film about Turner and had been for a while, and he wanted you to play Turner. So you had, before you got into the long, regular preparation process with Mike to make this film, you had a long time to think about it, to embrace the idea you were going to do it. How did you use that time? Did you embrace the work? Did you read about Turner?
Well, when Mike decided that he was going to make his film Untitled 2013, he asked me in 2010, and he said, "Don't get excited because we haven't got the money, and we don't know much about it yet. But also, do you want to do it?" I said, "Yeah," and he said, "Well, would you also start learning how to paint?" So I learned how to paint for 2 years. A very brilliant painter called Tim Wright, who's here tonight, and he gave me a fine art course all to myself for 2 years, on and off, and ended up, he taught me all the disciplines, and so that would give me a little bit of time to start thinking about it.
Well, apart from understanding the creative process and knowing artists, to be honest, it never occurred to me until we've made the film and people started asking that kind of question that there was any, I didn't really think in those terms at all. I mean, it's a film about Turner, so I haven't really thought about it. It's not really what it's about, except implicitly that as creative people, we understand creative people.
Well, there's a fair bit written about his father, too. I think I'd hesitate to say that the relationship between Turner Sr. and his son was the most important in Turner's life, certainly until he met Mrs. Booth. You know, Turner's father was an 18th century man. That's what we have to think about. Although we're talking about the film is set in the Victorian period, I had to think myself way back, both to Devon, where he came from, to learning how to shave, and do all the studio work that he was able to do as Turner's assistant. You just have to. I had 4 months working with Mike and Tim and Dorothy particularly. You just have to immerse yourself in the time, read as much as possible, and hope that what you eventually produce is convincing. I don't know what more to say about that. Right.
Dorothy, how much is known about Hannah Danby?
Not too much, actually. There's information from Turner's diaries and various places. We knew that she lived with him for 40 years, and she stayed on in the house after he died, and it kind of collapsed around her, and she was in charge of looking after the paintings and didn't do a very good job. But we also knew she had a skin condition. We knew she used the shrouds. But I didn't particularly have to learn anything practical because she wasn't blessed with that kind of aptitude, really, but sadly. But yeah,
you had to learn how not to cook, didn't you?
Yeah, I learned how not to cook. I did concoct a skin treatment during one very long improvisation, which I thought was rather good.
Marion, I mean, Sophia Booth wasn't someone that Turner himself spoke about very much during his life. I mean, did that affect how much is recorded of her?
Yes, I mean, I read everything I could find about Mrs. Booth, and there is some stuff, but again, not very much is known about her, and people varied in their opinions about her. She was illiterate, working class woman, so some people saw her as a money-grabbing, garrulous, illiterate, worthless person to have spent time with the great artist. Other people, Ruskin actually was very kind about her. He said she was very nice and warm and had offered him sherry and cake, apparently, because no one knew she existed until after Turner had died. And then obviously a few artists started to visit. So that was quite nice. We had the freedom to create from our imagination. But again, as Paul said, I tried to immerse myself in 19th century Margate and the life of those people, and to listen to recordings of very old people I found from the 1950s who'd come from Kent, for the accent. And yes, you just try to create and do justice to the person you're depicting and fill in the gaps that the biographies don't record, you know.
Well, there were one or two scenes that, not much, little bits that didn't make it. But that's in the way of films. I mean, that's always the case. On the whole, we pretty much, everything that you've seen is pretty much everything we shot. To have made, the reason why it's the last quarter of a century of Turner's life, primarily is because that's the most interesting part, you know. There is the relationship, the death of his father, the relationship with Mrs. Booth, and all the various events that you see. But most particularly, it's when his work became more radical and people thought he'd taken leave of his senses. And it deals with with what for me was the emotional part of his journey. Such as it was, there are things, such as it is, there are aspects of his earlier life which we've woven into the narrative. You know, the fact that the old man sold his paintings when he was a kid. Most important of all, the fact that one of the reasons why father and son were so close and so bonded is because the mother was mad, which they refer to on the old man's deathbed, etc. To have made a whole biopic would have necessitated finding a small fat boy that looked like Tim and that could draw and paint, and it would have been very tedious, and then a pimply youth, and it would have gone on and on and on and on and on, and this screening would still be going on at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. So. The scene in the film where the millionaire tries to buy Turner's complete oeuvre, and he says, no, I want it all to be kept together for the public to look at for free. That effectively is the Turner bequest, which is mostly in the Tate Britain, some of it's in the British Museum and in the National Gallery. In the archive, Tate Britain were incredibly generous to us and allowed all of us to use the facilities of the archive as much as we wanted. Within the archive, there are Turner's colour charts, which are copious, and I think you found them very stimulating too, didn't you, Tim? And that was very useful in terms of thinking about the palette, the tone, and the colour qualities of the film. The other thing, of course, is that this film is a major breakthrough and departure for us, because apart from a short that we made just before we made this film, A Running Jump, this is the first proper film, full-length film, we've made with a digital camera. And we've embraced this new, wonderful toolkit, and it is very exciting, and Dick and others have been able to do extraordinary things, not least the moving, emotionally and technically moving, Fighting Temeraire, which is courtesy of some very talented guys at Lip Sync in Soho, who we collaborated with to make the painting come alive at the moment when you see it. So.